I would like to call the meeting to order. Are we going to take, do we take roll?
Yes, I will take roll, and we are in compliance with the open meeting law. Chair Turner, please excuse. Vice Chair Carr.
Here.
Commissioner Erickson. Here. Commissioner Aguilar. Here. Commissioner Bowers, excused. Commissioner Toussaint.
Here.
Commissioner Burke.
Here.
And Commissioner Jacoby, I understand this place is...
Yeah, Sergeant Richter.
Okay.
Or Lieutenant Jacoby.
Thank you. We do have a quorum of 6.
Okay, so let the record show that Chair Turner and Commissioner Bowers are absent today. We do have a quorum. This meeting has been properly noticed and posted in accordance with open meeting law requirements. This has been advertised as a public hearing. If there is anyone present who would like to speak on an item, we'll have you come to the microphone, state your name and address, and if there's no one to speak on an item, the chairman may state, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Once everyone's been heard from, we'll close the public hearing. But I think the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we have minutes from the previous Traffic and Parking Commission meeting.
Excuse me, Vice Chair, could you please read number 3?
Number 3, number 3 procedures, or?
No, on the agenda.
Okay. Public comment?
Yes.
During this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, give your name for the record. The amount of discussion as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. Here? Okay, all right, so I'm good there. And please forgive me, the chairman is out today, and I'm the vice chair, and this is my first time, but we'll get through it. So,
Is there any public comment? Anybody care to comment on anything on the agenda?
Sure.
Just,
Where do you want me? Then I can sit right there. Is there a mic? That's a mic. Do we really
you
need
can do it
one?
here or at the agenda items. At the time of the agenda item, it's fine. It's at your,
Which would you prefer? I'm
the
game.
agenda
I'll
item,
defer to
it'll be
Okay.
more impactful.
That's
the
fine.
agenda item.
Okay.
So now we're going to look to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was October of 2016.
Mr. Chair. I'll second.
Okay, so we have a, did you get that?
Yes.
All voting to approve?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? What did I say here? Motion carries. Okay. I wish I'd known to brush up on my Robert's Rules of Order there. So, all right. So now we're going to talk about agenda item number 5, which is a discussion for possible action to remove the on-street parking at Western Avenue between Oakey Boulevard and Wall Street. That is in Ward 3, Bob Coffin's ward. And I see that there are 3 of you here to speak about that. Can we hear from Vicki first?
Sure.
See, that wasn't so hard.
It was easy. You're doing very well.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm going to try and do this as short and sweet as I can.
Let's start with your name. and
Vicki
address.
Kalbick. Do you want the property address or my address?
I'd say the property
Okay,
address.
1415 Western Avenue, 89102.
Is that a business?
It was. It's an empty building right now. Okay? Okay. I have real concerns, and I believe that there are going to be real issues in removing that parking at this time. I've been working on the safety issues of this for a year and a half with NDOT. They've been very agreeable. We've worked really hard, but unfortunately, we haven't got where we should be for the parking to be removed. My building is right on what I call the curve of Western, and if you've been around very long, you know when that curve was busy, it was not a good area, not a good position to be in all the time. We got hit numerous times, our property. So, and on that, the only way I have to get into my property is to pull my car up to my gate, unlock the gate, open the gate, and pull into the yard, which means I'm parked there. Not for long, but I'm parked there. And I've discussed this in depth, and there is a serious issue of safety, not for only me, but for the motoring public. Now, I noticed on this new map that we got, you guys, well, there's been 2 bike lanes put in there. 2 bike lanes put in the road that wasn't there before. So my question is, instead of removing, at this point in time, I'm sure you may have to do this sometime, but for now, instead of removing the parking there, can't we not do the bike lane? You've got 2 bike lanes, each one, it's my understanding, will run 4 to 5 feet, which gives you anywhere from 8 to 10 feet. And it's my understanding from talking to Eric at the traffic development that it's 8 feet for a parking space, wide. So that's my question and my concerns.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Vicki?
Commissioners, Mike Jansen, Transportation Manager. If I can address the comments from Mrs. Baldwin. The bike lane really, question related to the bike lane, because of the curvature of the road, as you noted, with the restriping of the project or the ultimate configuration when the new interchange is installed. And I'll walk everyone through an exhibit to kind of give an overall, but just to kind of
You're talking about the off-ramp?
The off-ramp,
Okay.
the Neon Gateway, just to
Yeah.
catch the question on the bike lanes. Really, what we were incorporating in the design was a shoulder, a 4-foot shoulder originally. Because of the curvature, because many of the businesses that were built over the years, they were built close to the road.
Yes, we were.
So we wanted to allow a buffer space on the road to accommodate the ability for vehicles when you're exiting your driveway to be able to creep up and see around some of those curves. So it originally started off with a 4-foot shoulder with 11-foot travel lanes. And working with NDOT and looking at how our entire downtown area continues to try to accommodate bike lanes, we're able to get 1 more foot by using 10.5-foot wide lanes
And that's for 4 lanes.
for 4 lanes and having a 5-foot bike lane. So the 5-foot bike lane is really serving 2 purposes. It's to give some room around the entire stretch for folks to be able to see traffic as they're exiting their driveway. And we happen to just be able to fit the bike lane because we picked up 1 extra foot that was left in that cross section. But to go to 8 feet, to put a parking lane just on one side of the street, we'd be down to barely 2 feet on the other side of the street, and we don't feel that's enough for a shoulder. So the bike lane kind of is serving 2 purposes.
Well, when the interchange comes, you're not putting a bike lane there, are you?
Yes, the bike lane will stay. And so maybe that's part of the question is, the action today item is to formally approve the removal of the parking, but we would not remove any parking until after Neon Gateway, the actual interchange is installed. So that could be, Vicki, where your misunderstanding of the item, it's because in order for NDOT to finalize the plans, if we were not to remove the parking permanently, then we have to change the plans. So what we're doing with this action is to try to get some certainty from the Traffic and Parking Commission, as well as followed by City Council, to agree with the plan that has been prepared, which would be when Neon Gateway, the interchange, is installed, that the roadway needs the 4-lane cross-section with the shoulders, which happen to also function as bike lanes because we're able to get them to be 5. So we would not remove the parking that you addressed, opening your gate. We understand that there is a process in place with NDOT where they would be rebuilding a gate where you would not have to stop in the street. So
Correct.
until that's done, until those gates are moved back, you would never see a situation where you'd be stopping in the street and having cars behind you, because the action today is to get concurrence really on the plan for opening of the new improvements. So it's really something that we have to do now just so we can finalize the plans.
Okay.
If that clears up, if that helps clear up
Well,
for
you know, it does. Then again, I don't know if not everybody's on the same page or what, but I have gone down to my building. I go down there usually 2 or 3 times a week, just because, I don't know. But anyhow, I have gone down there, and there have been no parking. I've got pictures of them all the way down. No parking signs. So, and I was told that that wasn't going to happen. Thankfully, NDOT, Project Neon, they're really great. Debbie Bonet, all of them. But I called and I said, hey, gang, there's no parking. If I'm going to abide by what you're giving me here, I can't get out of my car to open my gate. So I don't know if the I's aren't getting dotted and the T's aren't getting crossed, but I do know that more than once, well, I've got pictures of it, there's no parking signs on all these street.
On the southbound direction or northbound?
On the northbound, yeah. Well, I wouldn't care about the southbound, you guys are
Well,
over there.
That's what we probably have to look at, Vicki, because the ultimate plan would have no parking on both sides. And what may have happened, if you recall, a couple of months ago, we adjusted the temporary striping to not
You did.
stripe that extra
You
lane
did, after I
northbound.
called.
And what might have happened is the no parking signs that are to be installed for the ultimate condition,
Right.
they might have gone in ahead of time. But we'd have to double check that, because it was my understanding that we did not affect any parking from the Skyline vending, Skytop vending location north. That was the whole intent, was to not impact that
Well,
parking.
you guys have signs up in front of yours.
Just
They took them down?
a temporary.
Oh, okay. Okay, and I'm fine with all that. I'm fine with the end result. I think you guys are doing a terrific job. It's the best thing that's happened to that area, and I was born and raised here. But I just get a little weary when it's taking so long to come to the end product and they're passing approvals on stuff that hasn't really been dealt with yet. And I know Skytop Vending is right next to me. They're at the beginning of the curve. I'm in the middle of the curve, and then John Sharples is next to me. And they've got the same thing. So I don't know how it's going to get resolved, but it needs to be resolved. And I just hate to see anything get approved and then it go in when it hasn't been resolved. So that's my concern.
Most of the property is supposed to have on-site parking.
Yeah, on-street parking is not a guaranteed, Commissioner, on-street parking is not a guaranteed element of any site. Sites are dependent on their sites, but it's available when it's available. And what we've tried to do is keep the parking in this area as long as possible, recognizing that Project Neon is changing the dynamics
Sure.
of how the road works. And I
Sure.
think what we probably could have done a better job on was the temporary striping that's out there today. That striping that has temporarily removed some parking for the maintenance of traffic associated with Project Neon, particularly on the southbound side.
Well, and where most of them did it, those people do have,
Right.
it's not gated off. You can drive up to their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think we could have definitely done a better job in coordinating the portion, this northbound piece, which was a late change.
Yeah.
And again, to clarify, there is permanent striping, which will be installed by Project Neon's contractor when an interchange has landed. So maybe I could take this moment and walk everyone through. Jim, can you open up the supporting document exhibit? And it's an exhibit that shows Project Neon a full build-out. I'll just walk you through this exhibit. So what we have here is the I-15, I'll try to sit back out of the way. We have I-15, and we have today Wall Street. Wall Street is over here, and here's Oakey. And so today's agenda item is to look at the permanent removal of on-street parking between Oakey and Wall Street. And the reason why we went between Oakey and Wall Street is NDOT has already purchased all the properties in this area. They've been purchased as part of the widening. But from Wall West, Mrs. Paul Blick, I believe your property is right over here. These two? Right here?
Right there.
Yeah, these two. That's your
Yeah,
building.
those
There's
two.
the
Yeah.
two gates. You have a gate that'll go in here and here.
Right, and we have to move the one gate because of where the stoplight's going.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we have had a lot of working both with NDOT and the city and the property owners to try
Oh, they've been great.
try to resolve these types of issues, but to try to make sure everyone understands what's happening here today. Until recently, Western dead-ended at Charleston. And as part of Project Neon, they made a temporary connection where today Western actually now connects to Charleston and continues all the way north to Grand Central. That connection is going to remain in a slightly different shape. When Project Neon is all done, Western will come to an intersection here, which will take you to Charleston. It'll also extend the roadway over the railroad tracks that connects Industrial Road also to Charleston. So Project Neon is connecting Industrial Road to Charleston and Western to Charleston, but it's also providing a new interchange. So today on I-15, there's an interchange at Charleston, there's an interchange off the map here at Sahara. It's adding an interchange almost in the middle, and this is called Neon Gateway. That interchange is going to be used solely for high-occupancy vehicles, but it is projected to deliver a lot more traffic onto this corridor in conjunction with the new connections, because the road used to dead end, and now it's going to have a lot, some serious connections to the roadway grid. And so today, the original striping out there was one lane each direction with a very wide outside lane that easily accommodated parking. But the traffic volumes that are projected to occur once this interchange connection is made and once the other connections are completed, the volumes are going to go up. And so what you're seeing here is a cross-section that has 2 lanes southbound coming off that interchange, and it has 2 lanes northbound, with one of them turning onto the interchange, the second lane being an option, a left through, because we're projecting a very large movement in and out.
Is all the HOV lanes in the center of it?
The HOV lanes are going to be in the center of I-15.
Oh, so
Yeah,
all the other lanes are going to be going over that ramp?
correct.
Okay. That's what was confusing when I was looking at this.
Yeah. It's the first of its kind, really, of this type of interchange. Certainly in Nevada, there's been some done over other places in the country, but really, Project Neon is making huge connections of the HOV system on I-95, connecting them to the ones that are on I-15 and providing dedicated access points, such as this one at Neon Gateway. So really, what we're talking about on this agenda item is a roadway today that has relatively low traffic on it, where for all these years, and I've met with some of the other folks that are here today, we've had no problem allowing parking. It's really not been an issue. But now we've had 2 things occur. Number one, NDOT has started Project Neon construction, and one of their first phases of work was to temporarily connect Western to Charleston, because when they start working on I-15, traffic is going to be looking at all alternative north-south routes, and this is one of those routes that will be used during some of that traffic operations. So there's a temporary need, and that's really, today, the parking that's been restricted has only been temporarily removed
Well, that's what I thought.
for the purposes of maintenance of traffic associated with Project Neon. This agenda item is to, beyond the temporary restriction, to remove it 100% upon landing of this interchange and when NDOT does the final striping. Now, NDOT is here today, they can answer some of the questions, but my understanding is that moment when that road would have to be completely restriped and officially the parking gone, we're still looking at least a year and a half, I think is reasonable to say. And so, again, in order to finalize the plans that NDOT's doing with their contractor, this action is necessary, because if Traffic and Parking Commission says we don't support the removal of parking, and then it goes to City Council, and they also say they don't support it, then we have to change the plans. And so this is really a step that's necessary just so that we can have certainty on what's going to happen once that interchange lands.
God love you.
So
I've
hopefully,
seen so many
I'm hoping that clears it up. But again, it's all triggered by the roadway as it exists today is going to change in operation because it will have more traffic. That's why we needed additional travel lanes. That's why the parking lane is being proposed to be removed. But recognizing just what Mrs. Paulblick said, we have curves here. So from day one, we wanted to maintain a shoulder. And it was just a 4-foot shoulder so that if you're coming out of that driveway, you can inch out and see any traffic that may be coming around that bend. But we were able to get 1 more foot by going with 10.5-foot travel lanes. That allowed us to actually call it a bike lane, a 5-foot bike lane, and it serves double duty. So it handles another mode of transportation, but it still reserves room for folks to see getting out. So I hope that might clarify.
Well, it does, and my concern was if they were doing this now and then it was going to commission in 2 weeks, does that mean that's when the clock starts ticking?
What we could probably do to try to address a concern like this is we could say that the businesses have indicated that they need this area as long as possible, and that we would not permanently remove the parking until Neon Gateway Interchange has been landed, and we believe it's at least 18 months out.
Yeah,
And by that time, those gates would be all set back.
Well, and I think we're all glad to work with NDOT, and, I mean, really, they've been good. They hit a bump in the road of about 6 months, but other than that, they've been good. So, that's my only concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Lipkin?
My name is Chris Lipkin. I'm with Skytop Vending at 1509 Western Avenue, 89102. And, our business, we're very concerned that this is going to affect our business. It's not a question of even if it's even going to affect our business or not, our daily operations. It will affect us, but at the end of the day, if we can compromise, that can be maybe less of an impact on our business. But with the current plans that are in place, with Western as a 2-lane roadway, it's dangerous right now. It's a problem. Western is a problem. We have to, a lot of our vehicles are 14 and 16-foot box trucks, and we have to peek out to see the traffic that's coming, and it's hard. There's been accidents around that curve, and we even had to put up a sign on our north driveway reminding our drivers that there is no left turns out of that driveway because the drivers are not honoring the speed limit on that road right now. So we go from a 2-lane roadway to a 4-lane roadway and eliminate that parking. I understand the whole bike lane concept, giving us that shoulder to peek out there, but it's going to be less than what we have now, and it's going to be even more of a problem than it is today. And we actually had an accident in front of our property 2 days ago. And the vehicle that was one of the 2 vehicles almost hit our fence on our property. I mean, it was pretty close, so it's a problem. I don't know if we can lower speed limits on Western, police it a little more, or the pedestrians is another concern. We see a lot of foot traffic coming up and down Western. When we rebuilt on our property in 2008, we were required to put in sidewalks because that was supposed to be part of the upcoming needs for that road, and I can understand that. But now we're not adding on to that sidewalk, and there's no sidewalks on either side of the road around the curve, and we're not. You guys aren't planning on adding any sidewalks, so we got pedestrians coming up and down the street, tourists and homeless people, and it's dangerous for them as it is, and we're going to make it even more dangerous. We see people on bicycles coming up and down the street, people jogging coming up and down the street, so I don't know how this is going to work. Because that curve is so dangerous, another solution that I would suggest is to put up some kind of flashing lights, letting drivers know that they need to slow in this area because of the pedestrians and the how close our properties, are to the street, and being able to peek out without having to worry about getting into a collision with another vehicle.
Anything else?
That's all I have to comment right now.
Margot Erickson, Ward 2. What is the speed limit currently?
30 miles an hour. And the drivers aren't coming around that corner going 30 miles an hour. It's pretty scary.
Maybe one thing I could point out that's going to change to address that is what's happening today, and go back to this exhibit. Today, if you turn off of Oki, you don't have to have a stop until you get all the way to Charleston now, because it used to be an all-way stop at Wall Street, but that was removed because Wall Street's being closed. And so in its current, this piece of Wall Street is being eliminated in the ultimate construction. And so what's happened out there right now is when you turn off of Oki, you don't have a stop until you get to the traffic light at Charleston. Similarly, when you come off Charleston, there is no stop until you get down to Oki. So that's one of these interim speed issues that we have to deal with. But in the ultimate configuration, there'll be a traffic signal right here, right in the middle, and that signal will meter traffic given time to go this way, that way, all different movements. That's going to help control some of our speed because it's going to cut the length in half, almost in half. Yes, sir, Commissioner.
Commissioner Toussaint, my question is, what are the, he's been talking about the safety issues and so forth. What statistics do we have on that road and how does it look?
Commissioner, to answer that, the statistics we have are dated. The challenge is when Metro does an investigation on a crash out there, we can't get that crash data information from NDOT's Traffic Safety Division. It's usually a 6 to 7 month lag. And the changes that have occurred out here, they're not even 6 or 7 months old. And so if we were to ask for crash data, we'd be getting data there's a lag before we can actually get the most current crash data. And that's just a function of the process of accident reports getting QC'd by the Nevada Department of Transportation, the State Office of Traffic Safety. So we can certainly look at the crash data, but my sense would be it's probably not going to show us a whole lot because it'll be reflective of the prior condition. So the condition that's out there now is a relatively new condition that really started once the road was connected to Charleston. And now it's a north-south route that actually goes somewhere.
Would that be true of pedestrian accidents as well? I mean, it's talking about pedestrians. Have we had people hit there? And
I have not been made aware of any. We get reports from Metro's Traffic Bureau anytime that there is a serious crash involving a pedestrian, a bicyclist, or a vehicle. It's known as a serious collision report. And I have not seen any myself on Western. What we have in a lot of places, Commissioner, is we get a lot of crashes that are hit and runs. It's quite honestly one of the most common crashes. I'll speak to a lot of residents and they'll say, I saw 4 crashes there. We pulled the data. There's nothing on record. They're hit and runs, or when they sometimes hit private property, it's a hit and run. But I'd be more than happy to pull the crash data that is available, and we can certainly review that information.
Thank you.
Is it feasible, though, in the interim, with length of time, since the other stop sign is gone, to put something in there like a stop sign to bring this traffic down?
Commissioner, I think the challenge is the intersection that used to have an always stop is about to be removed. And so to just arbitrarily put a stop sign up, that results in driver non-compliance. If the stop sign is up and nobody is there to stop for, people will just blow it. And then we would have a challenge by having in an unwarranted stop sign. So if someone did crash, they would say, show me a warrant study to justify putting in that stop sign, and we would not be able to prove it.
Should never use stop signs.
Just one more question. Would it be possible to, I mean, in other areas, they put in slow, turn ahead, that kind of thing, signage. Do you have that there now? And if not, is that something we could do?
Those are certain things we could look at. We could look at curve warning signs and look at advisory speed plates. So if it's posted 30, we could take a look at the approaches coming at the beginning of the curve here and on each end and look at a curve with an advisory speed plate of perhaps 25. But it's something we could take a look at. That's certainly doable.
There is a sign, 25 on this curve.
So they're there now. Maybe they're faded or...
People slow down to about 40 or 50.
It's advisory.
Yeah, it's an advisory. Yeah.
Do you have any public coming into your store, or is it just your
We have customers that come into our facility, yeah, for
The only
parts and
concern I had,
stuff.
Mike, is there's no left turning here.
Correct. The double yellow.
Yeah.
Depends on how much volume they're coming in, other than their drivers.
Right, a center lane would be, left turn lane would be great.
But then that lessens the volume of the road, so.
I mean, right now, the roadway as designed in Project Neon is to have 4 lanes with bike lanes on the outside, really functioning for shoulders. The other cross-section that we could look at, to address your comment, Commissioner, is we could look at a 3-lane cross-section, which would be 1 lane each direction with a center turn lane, and still have the buffered shoulder bike lane on the outside. That's something we could take a look at, to address that concern. But again, as you see how it is now, it's
Or get
functioning
rid
off
of
of
the
that.
bike lane, go down to 10-foot lanes, and go with a 2-way left turn.
And you're putting the traffic right up against the curb, and so folks coming out of their driveway have no buffer. So it's really, it's one of those types of roadways where, we have a couple of options. Right now, this is the option that's been drawn up, and it's the purpose of this meeting, this type of discussion, to exactly address these comments from the public, because the roadway hasn't been finalized. This is the design that's in the plans, and if the discussions associated with the permanent removal of
Do
parking,
they have any projections on what the ADT would be?
yes, I have an exhibit that shows that, Commissioner. Jim, I think that's on the next sheet?
Future traffic volumes?
Yeah. It's a pretty significant growth rate, Commissioner, but I want to point out the traffic volumes are based on, they're showing the projection for 2025. Jim, you got to go to page 2. And then just, here it is right here. If you narrow it down. So today, the traffic volumes southbound are about 222 vehicles, and I just kind of explain this to everyone, 222 vehicles an hour during the morning peak hour and 147 during the PM peak. In the northbound direction, it was 101 and 424. So there's a bump there in the northbound, and what happens is a lot of folks that work in the resort corridor, they come up Western and they would actually use that wall back door.
30,000 ADT.
What's out there today was relatively, if we look at our ADTs, they weren't that high, but the Neon Gateway with the connection of the interchange, they actually are getting much higher. Southbound, we're projected to have 1,000 cars an hour. Northbound, very similar. And so with that amount of volume, without having 4 lanes, it's a challenge. And that's because of the interchange and the new connection. But remember, that's projecting out 2025. When those improvements are connected, it will take time for that movement to be realized. And again, it's trying to be conservative in some of those demands. And so, again, that's what leads the project to trying to have the full capacity based on what the regional traffic demand model shows could happen out here.
Well, do you think there'll be any time that, say if it gets up to 2025 and you see that the capacity needs to go wider, would you go in there and widen the road?
That would be difficult because there's a lot of businesses that have very little setback. And so widening the road would be very challenging to widen this section through here just because, as you can see here, many of these businesses are right on the back of walk. So it's not like you could just move a curb line back. And so it's really a limitation on what the roadway can handle as either a 4-lane cross-section as it currently shows, or something that would be, like you had indicated, suggesting some type of turn lane, which would be a 3-lane.
Well, I would suggest you just look into that once you start getting the buildup. Because I would have concern, especially if their driveways are right in that curve. Especially when the volumes are higher, they're not going to be able to get in there.
That's why we felt that shoulder was a pretty important piece of the layout, was to have that shoulder.
Well, I'd be more concerned about them being stuck out in the middle of the road, trying to make that left turn in.
Yeah, we have about 30 commercial vehicles. We park a lot of them in our warehouse, about half of them. So we do have a lot of traffic coming in and out of that property.
Just one point, we had met with this particular business, just to point out where they are. They're right here, and their building had burned down a few years ago, and they had to come in for a redevelopment. And their site, they requested a waiver of on-site parking. And so they are dependent on using the parking in this area because their on-site has only so many spaces. But it was a request of the applicant to waive the on-site parking requirements because they have a bigger building, and so those are the types of things that certainly, as you indicated earlier, on-street parking is never guaranteed that it's always going to be there for situations like this as our traffic volumes grow.
Do you have a further comment, Chris?
I do, actually. That's one thing I neglected to mention in my earlier comment, but we do utilize parking on the street. And we have up to 8 employees will park on the street up until a few months ago when the southbound parking lane was removed. So now we have 4, sometimes 5 people will squeeze in on the northbound parking side directly in front of our property. So we're going to lose that. And, at the end of the day, if that's what it's got to be, that's what it's got to be. But I think we need to compromise on what, the safety issues that we're concerned about. Because with that new HOV interchange, I understand the south or the southbound traffic will be slowed because of that traffic light. They'll have to come to a complete stop. So the southbound traffic will not be as dangerous, but that northbound traffic will still be a big concern. And what kind of signage is going to be in place before the curve to let people know that there is a traffic light right around the curve? You're not going to see that until you get past our property.
We typically would have an advanced sign signal ahead, and there's a number of different ways we could have that work. But all traffic would have to stop because we have to service the traffic coming off Neon Gateway turning left. So northbound traffic would stop as well. Maybe just to show you this intersection again here. Jim, can you just slide this a little bit that way? This will be a signalized intersection. So northbound traffic would stop when this eastbound left is released. So they'd be stopped as would be northbound, north and south. The way it's set up right now, coming from Charleston, one of those lanes would become a mandatory right turn because the projection is a lot of traffic is going to want to get onto that interchange. So one lane would be coming across, and then a second lane is picked up because we also are anticipating traffic coming off the interchange is going to want to turn right. So we pick up that second lane from that intersection. But northbound, every cycle they'd be stopping. And that intersection, because it's a T intersection, is probably going to run somewhere around an 80-second cycle length. So, almost every minute and a half, traffic will have to come to a complete stop. So a change like that will change the speed parameters on the corridor because right now it's a long stretch, and that's why it's
Well, the priority would be the ramp because they don't have to back up and go onto the system.
onto the main line. Correct.
I think a turn lane in the middle would help a lot. If you could keep shoulders in the plans with the bike lanes and one lane going both ways with the turn lane in the middle, that would help a lot.
Can you do that as a temporary configuration until such time the volume is more than
Those are all things that certainly, in terms of listening to the item at hand and hearing the citizen input at this meeting and subsequently at council, those are all things that we can absolutely take into account. So, we're here to provide you with some of the facts behind the changes that we're proposing to make, and we're certainly not opposed to taking into account any recommendations that may come out.
Mike, I've got a question. So the subject is discussion for possible action to remove the on-street parking, and the engineering division recommends the removal of it. I'd like to hear more about what your plan is in terms of additional signage to indicate the slower speeds and any change that's made. It's one thing to say, well, we'll take input from the board and from the public, but you're the professionals. What is your plan? What is your intention?
I think the first thing that we see on this corridor, Commissioner, is that traffic signal, when that goes in, it's going to change the dynamics of the whole corridor, as will the connection of the interchange. And so on a roadway such as this, right now it has the basic connections in it. It has the striping plans. There'd be new speed limit signs to replace the ones that are there today that may be faded. We would look at the existing curvature sign to see, again, here in today's comment that curve sign is out there. We'd love to see if there's a way we can more strategically place it with perhaps a different mount on the streetlight pole or another type of pole so that we can get better visibility. You've been around throughout the city. You've seen during certain roadways, particularly curved roadways, we sometimes implement an advanced curve warning flasher. We've used them for various situations. So today, the road has been a sleepy road for us. Over the years, we've had very little feedback from this area because it was a dead end. It dead-ended before it got to Charleston. So what we're proposing to do with the roadway as part of Project Neon, it's a big change. And so when that happens, we try to say we'll have to be prepared that if the changes occur, again, looking at those traffic projections, that's what this striping plan was for, to say we're looking at some higher traffic volumes. But they may not materialize, and so it's one of those, we don't really know, but we're always, when an issue arises, we're always able to immediately respond to try to accommodate a safety addition, kind of like what you were saying.
For the record, Greg Toussaint, could you, for my simple mind, explain exactly what lanes are going to be from one side of the street to the other? So I'm sure I understand exactly.
You got it, Commissioner. Jim, if you want to just narrow this down maybe to 60%. Now, I'll walk you from Oki, from the intersection at Oki.
So it changes, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's Oki intersection. Okay. When you come off of Oki Boulevard, Oki and Wyoming, it changes right there at this intersection. Oki turns into Wyoming. There's one travel lane coming northbound. Okay. And then the cross section opens up from one lane to two. And the reason for that is there's going to be a stop bar here for this traffic signal. And when that light turns red, this traffic will back up. And so we need to have queuing space to accommodate that traffic.
So it's 2 lanes.
So it becomes 2 lanes, yeah. So once you get past about that point, it opens up to 2 lanes. One lane would be signed as left only. Basically, it's set up for traffic that's trying to get on that interchange. The second lane would be signed as through left. So you could go through, or you could also turn left. It would be a protected left. The way this signal is set up to run would be 3 phases. You have northbound traffic would turn left and through. Everybody else would be stopped. Then you'd release the off-ramp, eastbound lefts and right. There's 2 left turn lanes coming off this off-ramp and a right turn lane. So north-south traffic is stopped. The eastbound left and right turns have green lights. Then that traffic stops and we release the southbound traffic. So it would be a 3-phase signal, and the current phasing plan would limit.
So it's 2 lanes each direction.
Yes.
And a bike lane.
And there's also 2 shoulders.
2 shoulders, bike lanes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right at this point, it's 2 lanes southbound, 2 lanes northbound with a bike lane shoulder on each side. When you cross this traffic signal, 2 lanes continue northbound. Coming southbound, there are 2 lanes coming, but one of them becomes a mandatory right turn. So much like this one is a mandatory left, the main movement is going to be a left on northbound and a right on southbound.
Thank you. I got it all figured out now.
Sure.
You can also put an overlap in that right turn,
Probably.
southbound.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But when that's finished, in my observation, the businesses are closed in. There is no way, with traffic stopping for the light, for people to get into the businesses on that side of the street.
Commissioner, one of the unique things about this project is Project Neon is providing huge benefits where the road is going from really a sleepy, unconnected road to a fully connected road. And what the city firmly believes is going to happen is that this corridor is going to redevelop. The uses are going to change. Some of the uses that are out here, the sites are hardly being used. The value of the land as currently being used on many of the parcels out here is nowhere near what it should be when it has such great connections. The road is going to have such good connections that it's going to become very, very attractive land to redevelop. And so some of those temporary conditions where the buildings are not set back, we anticipate there's going to be quite a bit of redevelopment in this corridor. And that's part of it is the project is seen as an element of trying to help redevelop the best use of some of these properties with new connections that previously never existed. And so some businesses will certainly change. I know Sky Top Vending invested heavily in rebuilding their site, and I know when we met with them early on, I think you guys are in it for the long haul because it's a good spot to distribute all of their work. In fact, them having the ability to hop on an interchange to make deliveries or to get deliveries, it could be a new benefit that wasn't there before, making the site maybe even better. You don't necessarily have to fight at Charleston or Sahara, provided you have 2 people in the driver's. You have 2+.
But that's only given HOV.
That's HOV.
2+, yeah. So you'd have to have someone in there, and you know those details of exactly how the HOV lane will operate from day one and going forward. You know, there could change in terms of what hours they may be functioning that way. I know when we met with SkyCop, you guys start real early in the morning. You're out on the road at, I think you said 4:30. 4:35 in the morning, and in some places the HOV don't start. Yeah, so you sort of, you know, so there's some potential there. But again, to address your question, we see the roadway improvements of the project, while they could have some negative impacts to the current properties out there, they also have a lot of positives. And so we're sort of in the middle of, in order to get the benefits, there's some negative, and one of those negatives is losing the on-street parking.
Commissioner Carr, Ward 3. I just want to make a note here that I live in Ward 3. I believe that's where this is. I drove down Western on my way here. I'd say this is a typical business day. There was 1 car parked between Oakey and Wall Street. I have typically used that Western to Wall Street to Martin Luther King to Alta to get to from the east side of the freeway to the west side of the freeway. And I can't remember ever having to drive around a parked car, and I don't feel that that is really, that those are parking lot spaces there to begin with, from my experience. And there was nobody parked there but 1 car today, so I don't think that they're going to lose a lot there. And I think on the scale of what you stand to gain with the improvement in value of your business is unbelievable. On the other, in addition to that, you guys, man, I want to see you guys do business. And I want to tell you that, you know, UPS has a new app that they use that where they just take right-hand turns. Everything they do is a right-hand turn. And that's saving them time, and it's saving them money, like tons of money over a year's time. And that might be something to consider going forward. Just, I'm not trying to tell you how to do your business. I'm trying to encourage you to us all be on one page. That there's answers to everything. And the other thing I want to say is that I do live 2 houses in from a street that has a slow down curve flasher sign, and you know there's one knucklehead that it doesn't work for every once in a while, but I see the cars stop or slow down and observe that, and I think maybe we want to do the right thing and make sure that we use flashing signs. In addition to that, always, and no matter what, for me, always bike lanes are important for our city. At some point, we have to face the fact that we need to be as bikeable as possible, and there is no other route from east of the freeway to west of the freeway that doesn't force you to take a long, dip underneath, which some people just can't maneuver. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Can I get one last comment? This is Chris Lipkin, the 1509 address. We recently acquired the property at 1301, which is just south of the HOV interchange, on the east end of the road. Yeah, and we go to and from that property all the time, and there's no sidewalks. We have to drive to that property, and it's going to be even more difficult to go to and from that property as well. It's going to be another problem for us as well. And the parking on the street, our drivers, our route drivers, primarily use the parking on the street, and they operate from 6 to 2 on average. But they work till the job's done. We have drivers finish as early as noon, and sometimes they don't get done until 3 or 4. So that parking will reside following, the AM hours of the day. So that's probably why you only saw one vehicle, is probably in the afternoon.
Maybe I missed it. But to go back, that was a decision that was made by you guys in the past, and I know you guys will find a way to figure it out.
We will.
No, our sidewalks are like necessity.
To address the sidewalks is the responsibility of the property owner when they develop their site, and sometimes property owners in an area that had no connections, they don't want to put the sidewalk in, and in the future, the city has some options. One could be to create a special improvement district where the sidewalk would be funded by all the property owners, and we could put them in. But because we're anticipating such a redevelopment of this area, we anticipate that property owners are going to be coming in to see us saying, hey, this was my old site, here's what I want to do, and I'm going to put in the latest 10-foot wide sidewalk or an 8-foot wide sidewalk. So the city's in a position where we really don't want to put money in on a little skinny 5-foot sidewalk that may get torn out as part of the redevelopment that we anticipate in this area. There are some paths in there, but they're not continuous. As you noticed, some of the properties that came in, they put in their sidewalk, as you guys did when you redeveloped, but the ones north of you, and I believe they back then there was just nothing to connect to, and so some of them are just not there.
Vicki Pollock,
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Could you
Yeah,
have
I got it.
people come?
So we.
I have no further comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And once we take a comment from you,
Okay,
we
fine.
need to follow some rules of order. So if nobody else is opposed, I would be happy to have Vicki come back and make a comment. Is that okay with the rest of it? Okay.
The only comment I was going to make is I was going through some pictures.
Hold on.
Could you have her come?
Could you please come up here?
Vicki
and
Pollock.
State your name, address.
1415 Western.
We need the birth date of your youngest born.
Let's see. Oh, gosh. That was just last year now. But yeah, I just wanted to say I was going through some old pictures because we built there in 1956. And at that time, there were telephone poles along a dirt road, and that building was back. I don't think they ever anticipated that road being that big in 1956.
Sure,
So that's why you have some of the situations that we have.
sure.
Yeah.
Is there a way you can design it to where you have a 3-lane configuration in the center of the curve, and then you go out to your normal intersection?
Commissioner, I think we can look at anything that is something that we think we want to look at. We've certainly heard some comments today that does give us some indication that a 3-lane section might be of consideration.
Until such time that the volumes are there.
Possibility, yeah. And again, I just go back to, from day one, we recognized that we didn't have continuous sidewalks out there because of the age of the development. So having that shoulder was always in place under state law. Where there is no sidewalk, a pedestrian is allowed to use the street. But we certainly don't want them walking in the street where we don't have at least the shoulder. And by getting that extra foot, we actually were able to fit a bike lane. So, it's the challenges of having a old section of roadway that, again, we foresee quite a bit of changes, and this is really the first big change that's really happening over a really
We
long
have
time.
42 feet now. 42.
It varies slightly up and down the corridor, but it's around, I want to say, it's close to 46 to 50 feet of pavement, I think is what we have. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Toussaint, so if we were to do that, 1 lane each way and a center lane, that's what we discussed, you'd be reducing the traffic volume by half.
Right.
That's the way I calculate it.
Commissioner, just to address that, it's not actually half because, as one of the business owners mentioned, when you have 2 lanes in each direction with a center line, you lose some capacity when traffic slows down to try to turn left. When you have 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane, those 1 lanes in each direction get full capacity, and all the left turn lanes go into the center turn lane. So it's not really a full loss of 25% of capacity going from 4 lanes to 3. That's really what we're saying here. Do we look at a 4-lane section, which is what it is today, or a 3-lane section, one in each direction with a continuous center turn lane, it varies the capacity just because you don't have that vehicle stopping and the car behind it having to weave around.
And how would you rate it from a safety point of view, 3 lanes versus the 4 lanes?
You know, it depends on the number of driveways on the corridor, and generally speaking, we've done a number of corridors where we've converted from 4 to 3 to fit bike lanes to fit some of these other mode connections. We've gone from 4 to 3 in some areas, and they've worked pretty well. In this case, we were able to keep 4 plus the bike lanes, but certainly, you know, if the feedback from today is that, you know, maybe we should take another look at this, I think one of the possibilities is we could sort of obey the item to have us an opportunity to investigate a 4 to 3 lane cross section and look at all the impacts that they may have. And that would certainly be one thing. To try that answer right now without, you know, really laying everything out and seeing how it all fits, it would be difficult to do. But that's certainly one thing we could have you guys direct us.
Can I make a recommendation that you evaluate the 3-lane cross-section versus the 4-lane, especially within the curb area? And as a temporary situation until such time that the entire project's completed, and to reevaluate what the final configuration will be.
So I guess if that was a motion to do
Is that a motion?
Sergeant Richter, for the record. Projecting what this street's going to become, what it is now, a center turn lane with that heavy of traffic, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but we get a lot of accidents when there's a center turn lane and it's a heavily traveled road. So you're stuck, you're trying to turn left in the center turn lane, people coming the opposite way, the guy in the first lane says, you're good to go, you go, and then you get nailed by that next lane. And it's going to be worse because if it backs up, you know, you're going to have that accident. It's truly a blind T-bone accident that we get all the time.
But it would only be 1 lane in each direction plus the 2 ways.
If you have a center turn lane, I'm talking about. If there's
Then 1 lane.
Right, 1 lane. But if they go around, if that shoulder's there, and they can fit in there, they're going to go around that shoulder. They're going to see traffic stop. They're going to see that open. There's no bikes in there. They're going to go around, and then boom. We get it all the time with our bus lanes, with our bike lanes. I think the challenge is going to be once that's congested, these businesses trying to get out and make a left turn either way, it's going to be just about impossible if it's busy. But I also think if they redevelop the area, businesses are going to be set farther back. They're going to have to redesign this road anyway.
Right.
And it's just a matter of time.
That's why I was saying it was only a temporary.
Right, but it depends on the volume. If it's heavy volume after this thing is done and they have a center turn lane, I think it's going to cause a lot of accidents.
I just want to add to that. I think it's going to be confusing for people to begin with anyway, and I don't want to see us do one thing and then do another thing. It makes us look like we're not sure of what we're doing. I'd rather see us just do what staff recommends and move on, and then let the NDOT project move forward. At the end of the day, honestly, it will be the best thing for the pockets of the people on that corridor. And it will be unconfusing for the drivers. That's just my 2 cents. Like, would you still like to make that motion?
So there's no second denied.
So then I will make a motion for us to approve that removal of parking from Western to Wall Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Any discussion?
Yeah.
Any discussion?
I'm sorry, who can I get? Oh,
Go ahead.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes. Greg Toussaint. The only thing I would like to add to this, because I like the motion, is that we request from the traffic department that they implement a warning system at that curve, before and after the curve, I guess, depending which way you're going, which would be highly visible and maybe even striping the street or something so that people know that they're entering a danger zone. So they're less likely to speed through it.
Commissioner, I think the tool we would use, we've used it with some success in some areas. So right now, we start off with a static sign, which is just a sign that says curve ahead, reduce your speed to X or Y. Sometimes where that doesn't work as well, we upgrade it to a solar-powered amber flashing beacon to get the driver's attention so that it's the next level. So we usually start off with a static sign and see if we hear from residents or if we hear from business owners that, we're still having people speeding through here, we elevate it to the next level. And so I think what's out there now is just a static curve sign. So we could certainly look, just simply because of the change that's already occurred with the temporary striping, I wouldn't be opposed at all to investing in some solar amber beacons and upgrading the sign. We might even look at the size of the sign. It could be an older sign, so that's something I wouldn't have any problem at all looking at to do an initial temporary interim safety improvement just to address some of the concerns we've heard.
Thank you.
So do we add that to the motion?
No, we can take it as a direction.
Okay. So now if we move forward here, all that are for that,
Aye.
Aye.
any nays? Motion carries. Do I bang it?
Excuse me, before we move on, could I get the name of the gentleman next to Chris that spoke?
Yeah,
Mark.
that's Mr. Lipkin also.
Mark Lipkin.
Okay, thank
What does one have to do to get, when Wall Street used to have a stop sign?
I'm sorry, but at this
I can't
point,
speak.
yeah, no, at this point, we move forward. But
I'll give him a call. You can call him.
I was waiting for the officer for that.
Okay, the next item, discussion for possible action to change the speed limit on Lamb Boulevard between Charleston Boulevard and Owens Avenue from 45 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour. That's also Ward 3, Councilman Coffin. Is there anybody that would care to speak on that? Mike?
Commissioners, this item before you today, one of the things that we've been working,
We need a curb sign.
one of the things we've been working with,
Your foot was sticking out.
UNLV's Safe Community Partnership that's led by Erin Breen. One of the things we've been working with her on is evaluating our 45 mile per hour speed limits. It's our highest speed limit in the city of Las Vegas. Some other entities have 50s. Our highest speed limit on arterial streets is 45. And she asked that we take another look at our 45 mile per hour corridors to see how are those speed limits working in terms of crash data, as well as how they're working with the activity of pedestrians, bicyclists, and other modes. And so you'll be seeing items throughout the year as we work on these reevaluations of corridors. And we're using a tool that recently was provided nationwide to traffic engineers across the country. It's called US Limits. And it's trying to use a consistent methodology of evaluating speed limits based on certain parameters. And what I've pointed out here, the main items that this tool looks at is the 50th percentile speed. Some folks like to call that the average speed, the 85th percentile speed, the average annual daily traffic, the crash rates on a corridor, the pedestrian and bicycle activity, is it low, is it medium, is it high, is there the presence of any on-street parking, the number of driveways, the number of signalized intersections, the area type, is it a commercial area, an industrial area, a residential area, and then also the geometry, does it have any unique alignments? And so we're using this tool to evaluate all of our 45 mile per hour speed limits. And again, we're doing it in conjunction with UNLV and trying to make sure that our speed limits are safe and appropriate. And so this stretch of Lamb Boulevard is currently posted 45. And when we went through the analysis, a couple of things to point out. The crash rate on the corridor is more than twice the average for similar roads, and the injury rate is more than 4 times the rate on similar roads. And so it also has quite a bit of pedestrian activity, high transit usage. And so looking at all these factors, another one that stands out, in some of the backup, you'll see some of the output of the document. There's 100 driveways, a lot of driveways on this stretch of land. And so going through the analysis, we're coming back recommending that we should lower it from 45 to 40. And when you look at the current traffic information, the average speed that's out there today, the 50th percentile is 39, but the 85th is 49. So it's upper, 85% of all traffic is doing 49 or less. And so this is a tool that we've just started using. Maybe about 6-7 months ago, we had another agenda item to do an assessment on another corridor, Durango in the Northwest. So again, I want to just point out that this is something we're doing citywide, and we're grabbing different sections of 45-mile-per-hour arterials, and we'll be carrying them forward as all the information is collected. And so with that, our recommendation is to lower the speed limit on this stretch of land. I want to point out one thing. This is the only stretch of land in the city of Las Vegas. North of Owens Avenue is in Clark County, and south of Charleston is in Clark County. And so if this change is made, we are going to strongly encourage Clark County to consider using the same tool and to consider possibly lowering their stretch as well. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
I'm sorry, go ahead. My only question is why only 40? With the injury crash rate, Mike, is the only thing.
Commissioner, I think sometimes it's that incremental change that we are trying to introduce before we look at our 35-mile-per-hour roads. And I know I work with you on Maryland Parkway, where Maryland was lowered to 30, what used to be 35. We're looking to incrementally change some behaviors of our drivers, of our pedestrians, of our transit users. You know, every corridor you go down, you see a lot of wrong things. A lot of things are happening that shouldn't happen. But there's some degree of, is the speed limit going too low reasonable? Is everyone going to exceed that speed limit? And I'm sure Metro can comment on if the speed limit is not the right number. It's just a real challenge. So we felt the incremental lowering of our high 45s, bringing them down to 40, it's a first step. It may not be the last step. We may look at this road for 2 years, review the crash data, and see how it's operating. We're hopeful that we'll see some improvement on some of the challenges. But again, this is trying to use the analysis tool we're hoped to see is being used now nationwide, so that everyone's treating the criteria in a similar fashion. And 40 is the number that we're being recommended from this tool.
Sergeant Richter on the record. So what what you're saying, I partially agree with. What happens is when they have 45s and they drop the speed limits down to 35 or sometimes 30, and we conduct enforcement. The problem is the drivers see the 45, they're doing that, and then all of a sudden they're on a road that drops down and they're not aware of it. Okay? And the reason they're not aware of it is, one, they're not paying attention. But two, there's always just one sign that says reduce speed ahead, and they don't see it. And then when we stop them, we're like, did you know the speed was 35? They're like, no. I didn't know. So when we do the road safety assessments, I always ask them if they can put more signs or make them bigger. But in the reality of it is those end up turning into really speed traps. And it's not my best interest to say this, but it's true. Because if I go shoot radar in any 30 or 35 in the city, then everyone's going to come through at the prior speed. They're just going to come through. And to be fair to the citizens, they're not aware that it dropped. And then, for us, it's easy pickings. So my only thing is I like the 40. I agree that 35 would be better. But if you follow through on these areas within the city, there needs to be a lot of notice to the drivers that it's dropping. Maybe extra signs even with the speed limit on those streets. But I think it will reduce accidents, especially with the pedestrians. And if they don't slow down, we'll be there. So.
Commissioner Toussaint, for the record, Do you have any data that when you do something like this, drop it from 45 to 40, what is the impact on safety and accidents and injuries and so forth? Do you have any statistical data on that?
The challenge, Commissioner, is every segment of roadway is so different. This stretch of Lamb is totally different from the next stretch we're going to discuss, Town Center. They're both 45 miles per hour today, but their characteristics are so different. And so it's difficult to make an assessment on just making a speed limit change, how it's going to affect. I can give you a few examples. On Martin Luther King, from US 95 to about Owens, it was 45 miles per hour after the road was widened, very heavily traveled roadway. We had quite a few pedestrian-involved crashes on that corridor, and we lowered the speed limit from 45 to 35. And, I hate to knock on wood, but we haven't had as many pedestrian-involved crashes on that corridor since we lowered the speed limit. Maryland Parkway is a corridor that was 35. We lowered it to 30. Maryland Parkway's dynamics were very different than others. Had a lot of curve points. We had a park in the middle of the road. So, in answer to your question, really every road is so different, has so many different issues. This one stands out because it's got a lot of driveways. The more driveways you have, the more cars you have slowing down, starting up, pulling out, and they tend to be more problematic corridors. But again, we feel that doing the assessment, looking at the information, there's a lot of research that went into this program from the Federal Highway side, where this is a program that came to us from Federal Highway, where they looked at nationwide data, all the researchers, and so we're kind of leaning on that research to say, hey, this is a lot of minds looked at these parameters, and this is the recommendation, and we think it's worth.
But you think even just dropping it 5 miles an hour will make a measurable difference?
I think it'll have some improvement on the corridor, yeah. And I think what we would do is we would schedule a follow-up study. Again, because of the lag in getting crash data, we'd probably schedule a follow-up study somewhere around a 12 to 18-month period so that we can capture a reasonable amount of data. The other challenge that we have on every roadway, we're a growing city right now. There's growth everywhere in the valley. So today, when we counted this corridor not too long ago, the traffic volumes were 34,000 cars a day. In 18 months, it could be 40,000 cars a day. So traffic is dynamic. If there's construction on I-15, traffic looks for the nearest north-south route, and we could all of a sudden, that 18-month period, we might have more crashes and say, geez, the 40 mile per hour didn't help. But we're actually have a lower rate because now the road's carrying 45,000 cars a day. So it's usually so dynamic, particularly in a growing economy, where all of a sudden just a brand new school or new building pops up and now you have 10,000 more cars.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Anybody want to make a motion on this?
Dr. Toussaint, I'll move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So the motion carries. And now, last but not least, discussion for possible action to change the speed limit on Town Center Drive between Hualapai and Summerlin Parkway from 45 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour. That is in Ward 2, Bob Pierce District. And do we have any citizen participation here? So, Mike?
Okay, Commissioner, so yeah, this is another one of those 45 mile per hour segments, and we actually studied the entire corridor. We went from Charleston all the way to the end, and the analysis that we did didn't recommend any changes south of Hualapai, but it did recommend changes from Hualapai to Summerlin Parkway. And here's a great example, Commissioner, on why we believe this recommendation makes sense. North of Summerlin Parkway, the road is 35 miles per hour, and it more or less, Town Center dead ends at Village Center Circle at a large roundabout. And so the arterial where people are going, say 45, they have to slow down because it really, Town Center ends. That exists north of the Parkway. From Summerlin Parkway to Hualapai, we have two roundabouts. And so traffic today at 45 posted speed, they're doing 45, but when they enter the roundabout, they have to go down to 25. They come out of the roundabout, they accelerate, and then they come to the next roundabout at Canyon Run, they got to go down to 25 again. And so because of the intersection controls on this stretch, that's where we believe lowering the speed limit, extending the 35 further from where it ends today at Summerlin, bringing it down to Wallapai, we think makes sense because of those two roundabouts that run through that stretch. Also, the road was recently rehabbed. I know Commissioner Carr would like to hear this. We retrofitted the road with bike lanes. It's another one of our corridors that we grabbed a little bit of width in the travel lane. The lanes used to be 12s out there. We made them 10.5s, and that gave us room to fit in a 5-foot bike lane for other modes, and also just, again, to give a buffer space at driveways for pedestrians. You know, it's, in our minds, wherever we can do it, it's the right thing to do. And so the slightly narrowed lane should also give us a little help on the speeds that were previously out there. But our recommendation really comes back to the analysis tool, which recognized that the crash rate out there was certainly not as bad as it was on Lamb. But as you can see in the backup data, the crash rate was a little bit higher than the average for this road, and the injury rate was a little bit higher. We also have a bus route on Town Center, and we have a number of pedestrian crossings going back and forth between different businesses. And so taking all that information into account is where we're coming back recommending that this corridor basically extend the 35 a little further south, but leave it, once you get past the two, really there's 3 roundabouts. Once you get past the 3 roundabouts from Village Center Circle to Wallapai, it's a regular 6-lane arterial with very few drivers. There's not a lot of driveways on this section of Town Center, and it connects down to the new Summerlin Mall area. So that's our recommendation for this.
When I worked in that area, when I was with the Forest Riders, there was a lot of crossings from the culinary school to Burger King. Here's the people learning how to go to Burger King. I mean, Burger King was loaded with them. And happy in the streets.
There's a lot of job employment buildings on this stretch of Town Center, and the number of folks use transit, to get there, and so they're crossing Town Center. There's the hospital there as well, Summerlin Hospital. We have a lot of fire trucks, a lot of ambulance constantly going through this area, and so taking all that into account, extending the 35 further south, we felt was an appropriate move.
I live out there, and I can tell you, when you're trying to do, the roundabout to the hospital off of Town Center or whatever it is, most people are just zooming along and they barely stop, and there's a lot of miss accidents because of it. I mean, those roundabouts, you don't go 45, and you don't even go 35, or you end up on an angle. So I would, I think having something, because roundabouts are a pain in the butt. Point blank, and that's been since way back in D.C. 40, 50 years ago. So, yeah, something to prevent anybody getting hurt would be nice.
Commissioner, just a few points on the roundabout. Some people love them, some people hate them. I will tell you, we've rarely ever had a really bad injury or fatality in roundabouts, other than occasionally a motorcycle plows right through the middle of them. But the crashes that we have in roundabouts are very low injury. They're minor injury, whereas at a regular, if that roundabout was taken out, we'd put a traffic signal there. It would be the standard. At traffic signals, we might have less crashes, but they're very severe because it's a higher speed crash. And so over the years, I've worked with Metro's Traffic Bureau looking at these roundabouts many times. We've done a number of upgrades. We've added additional signage and markings to try to make them a little bit more understandable for folks. If you haven't driven in a roundabout, they are different. So we've done little incremental improvements that we think have helped. But at the end of the day, many of the captains of the Traffic Bureau that I've spoken to on them, they said we don't have a lot of bad injuries. So they recognize they may have more crashes to respond to, but they're little fender bender side swipes as opposed to really high-speed crashes where oftentimes the person is hit or killed.
I do recognize the fact that you put that far right lane and at Wallapai, when it goes in towards the hospital, it is still confusing even for somebody who's done it several times. But, I think, slowing them down is going to make a major difference for people who are going into that area rather than the people who are already in it.
And I think we would also recommend that I'd follow what Metro has indicated, where we would be stepping down the speed limit here from 45 to 35, And so what I would probably put in our work order is that we would have a reduced speed ahead sign, possibly with a solar beacon, so that we get that additional attention of the drivers, so they know that at this point they're stepping down from 45 to 35. Again, hearing what Metro's seeing, certainly we want to try to help that out as well.
Any more discussion?
Sergeant Richter for the record. So I agree with 35. Just in that, I've taken a lot of actions before you guys upgrade them at the roundabouts. They're much better. We have fewer accidents. However, the problems we were having was when we get someone plow through there, the speed limit was 45 even in the roundabout. So this reduced speed will help us when we get someone that's driving recklessly, and we can prove it with their, usually their braking. And if it's 35, that'll help us because we can prove that they came in too fast.
Question though, further, so once you cross back over South Wallapai, it will go back up to 45?
Yes, Commissioner. That stretch is a relatively straightforward arterial. There's no more roundabouts in that stretch, and it's a pretty good sized road. It's carrying between 25 and 30,000 cars a day, and so we would. The analysis we did, again, we went all the way to Charleston, and the crash numbers were nowhere near as high as they were on Lamb, and so it was not recommending doing a change on that stretch. But that's not to say that we would continue to monitor it, and I want to point out that Summerlin Mall, it continues to grow. All the land around there is growing, and so traffic volumes on Town Center are going to continue to grow because it goes right into the Summerlin Center area.
Well, more than that, you've got that training center going in, and who knows what else they're going to do with that land that they're hoping. So, I mean, I don't enjoy the roundabouts, but it's not fun when you're going in them and somebody, you see them coming at you, here, are they going to stop? Are they going to slow down? It's scary, so yeah, you can slow the traffic down, even in front of the hospital where you don't have to go inside to get hurt.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would make a motion that we move on this stretch of Town Center from 45 to 35.
Second.
Is there any, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The motion carries. I think that's it. This is where I state for the record that the recommendation of the Traffic and Parking Commission goes to City Council for agenda for consideration if appropriate. Is there one more? No. I want to thank you guys for being patient with me today. There is one more?
Yeah, we have the back section.
Okay. Citizen participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. No subject may be... Do we have anybody that wants to... Do I need to go through this?
Just read number 8 as written.
Yeah, okay, I have to read it, all right. Citizens' participation. Public comment during a portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. No subject may be acted upon by the commission unless that subject is on the agenda and is scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, give your name for the record. The amount of discussion on any single subject, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed, may be limited. Do we have anybody that wants to speak? No? The meeting is adjourned.